In light of everything that's going on, it's hard sometimes to not think about it and to take our mind off of it, especially living in the US. It's everywhere. So this thought came to me as far as like, life imitating art, art imitating life, and talk about corruption in one piece. We could have several conversations about what's going on in the real world and the corruption going on in the US currently. And I do that on Twitch. So follow me on twitch.tv/BragoDace, where we had an in-depth discussion about just police brutality, etc. But for right now, I want to focus on just the corruption in one piece. And of course, that's inspired by what's going on around me, and just talk about the systematic oppression that the One Piece world is currently going through. I don't want to compare both worlds, the real world and a fake world, because, obviously it doesn't compare, because in the real world, you're actually going through it. But when you compare situations, one could say Oda hit the nail on the head when it comes to exposing simple and in-depth societal issues. So first, I guess we have to start from the top, the Celestial Dragons, and how they've created this ladder of corruption. Yes, now we know about Imu-sama and the Gorosei, but it doesn't let them off the hook. For the most part, they are descendants of 19 of the 20 kings that established what we now know of as the world government. It doesn't excuse any of their actions, but the corruption in One Piece, for the most part, starts from them. The Celestial Dragons in general, they are literally oppressors, right? And they feel because they have the blood of the creators of the world that they can do whatever they want to do, and it's allowed. From buying slaves to killing whenever they want to, from the heavenly tribute, they've created a society in which you're defined by your birthright, from how you were born, where you were born. I think what's perfect is how Oda has used throughout the story different examples of characters we run into and how the system and the world has kind of molded them to what they are. I guess we can start with the Straw Hats, and let's just start with Luffy. Luffy's grandfather being the hero of the Marines, Garp. Luffy's dad being the Revolutionary Army, the main opposing force of the world government, and how that's kind of molded Luffy's life. Was Dragon not in Luffy's life because of his ideals and creating this revolutionary army to oppose the Celestial Dragons because of their just social injustice and everything they've done in the world? It's a part of it. So in essence, Luffy got this pirate mentality. Of course, his grandfather was a great Marine, but Luffy was heavily influenced by a pirate who was in his life. So that's just one example of how this system has created someone like Luffy. When we go to Nico Robin and O'Hara trying to uncover the history of the world, they're essentially persecuted and it's just genocide just because they're trying to figure out what happened. And that of course is a result of the system that's been created in the world of One Piece. We don't know exactly the history of a lot of these characters that I think have been mostly impacted by this system. But for instance, someone like Akainu, who has like great disdain for pirates and Dragon in particular. I wonder how much of that has to do with pirates and his upbringing. But the crazy thing here is Akainu blaming pirates, right, for the destruction that they bring forth in the world, and Dragon for opposing this destruction brought forth by the Celestial Dragons. It's somewhat hypocritical because we have to understand that a lot of these societal issues and just pirates in general were created by what the Celestial Dragons do. This new era was heavily influenced by Gold Roger. I'm sure we're going to learn more about Gold Roger's journey and how this ties into the Celestial Dragons, because we know he went against Rox D. Zebek, whose goal was to take down the world government. He was going the more radical route as far as ripping these people down from their perches because, of course, he was opposed to the systematic oppression that they brought forth. I think the issue here comes in is what is too much force? What is too radical? Do you sacrifice the lives of every Celestial Dragon, even the children, just to rid the world of these people? Some people may not want to take that route. Some people may not believe in just the destruction of all these people, even the kids who really hadn't done anything as yet. And we see that in Wano, in which that could create a circle or a cycle of hate. In Orochi and Kanjuro, those kids, they were persecuted because of their families. But based on everything the Celestial Dragons have done, should that even matter? We can go to another Celestial Dragon in Doflamingo. And the system essentially created Doflamingo, right? Doflamingo being a Celestial Dragon, of course, his father, seeing the corruption in Marijoa, did not want to be a part of that anymore, brought his family down to the regular people, and because the people knew of the oppression by the Celestial Dragons, there was no way they could ever accept Doflamingo and his family. So therefore, they hung him up to stone them, and that created the monster that is Doflamingo. And Doflamingo, he has taken out his frustrations on Dressrosa by essentially coming back and taking the country that he felt was rightfully theirs, or the property of the Don Quixote family. It's honestly an obscene level of entitlement to think that a country belongs belongs to you because your family owned it in the past. But then that goes back to the people that say Doflamingo was born evil, which I think, can be heavily debated. We have to look at the system and the world in general and how that molded him. Of course, we can look at Corazon and say, well, Corazon went the opposite route, but that's how the world works. Two people can experience the same thing and have two completely different motivations or actions or results. And that's what happened between Doflamingo and Corazon. Corazon went the route of becoming a Marine, an undercover agent, and Doflamingo went the route of becoming this tyrant or this pirate. And of course, he was molded by other people who had gone through things themselves and felt like the world had to burn or had to feel the same pain that they felt. We can even go to Fishman Island when Otohime, she was doing everything in her power to bring her family, bring her species to the light, to somehow get past human versus fishman, look past slavery, look past the oppression. That was her goal, and she had some support in Marijoa to make this happen. And of course, hate doesn't just go away. So as much as people hate Hody Jones, you have to understand what Hody Jones has seen, what Hody Jones grew up in. So for him, seeing what Otohime was doing, he couldn't stand by that because one of the heroes of Fishman Island, Fisher Tiger, stormed Marijoa, freed the slaves, created the Sun Pirates, and then he was essentially murdered. So with all this oppression, going to Sabaody and seeing Kami being bought as entertainment, basically as bait to be killed by these people, nothing has essentially changed. So telling these people to accept this oppression and to then somehow work with your oppressors, for some people that's a lot to get over. And then if you go even further and how the Sun Pirates and Fisher Tiger and everything that happened to him influenced Arlong to then go to Nami's village and oppress them based on what was done to him, it is a vicious cycle in the One Piece world. There are a bunch of noble people who have taken steps to somehow rid the world of this hate, but it doesn't just go away. I think something that people reference, but it's heavily underrated, is Fujitora and his actions in Dressrosa. He made the correct decision at every front to get to where we are now. And if you're anime only, I'm about to spoil, ridding the world of the warlords, or ridding the world government or the Marines of that warlord system, which in essence has not worked. And when you look at the world of One Piece in general, a lot of these things just haven't worked the way we expected them to. From the revolutionaries to the Marines, the entire system was broken. Yes, you have these strong pirates that you're supposed to rely on in times of need. But for the most part, the net result was negative. It was not positive. Even at Marineford, most of the warlords were just having a good time. They were not doing what they were supposed to do. Some were even opposing you. We had two warlords on the battlefield who came with Luffy, and they were opposing the world government. Essentially, this system caused Alabasta to happen, or Alabasta almost happened, if not for Luffy and his crew. Dressrosa actually happened, in which lives were changed forever. And so Fujitora's stance, in which he prostrated in front of King Riku and somehow took the first step in acknowledging the issues in the world government, in the Marines, kind of brought the system to its knees and forced the world government to make a move. Something that always resonates with me is Eustace Kid and what he said in Sabaody as far as Celestial Dragons, and how in comparison to him, being the brutal pirate that he is, murdering civilians, murdering other pirates, in comparison to them is nothing, is kind of noble because of how terrifying they have been in their reign. This corruption runs deep, from the world government working with other pirates to purchase weapons, and this was shown in Wano. This system does not work, but how is it fixed? How do they fix this? This corruption is at every level, and essentially the only system or the only force that you can somewhat depend on are the revolutionaries. But how does the revolutionaries accomplish what they want to without the use of force and sacrificing innocence? Are they willing to do that? People talk about Akainu and how corrupted he is, but like I mentioned before, he's a product of the system, a product of his environment, him not trusting pirates and believing in 100% in absolute justice. You are molded that way, and this is a result of the actions of the Celestial Dragons. Corruption is so crazy in One Piece that people have to essentially give their lifespan for protection in the New World, as shown in Totland. They have to deal with a possible rampaging monster at any point and give their lifespan for protection or just the illusion of a paradise in Totland. That's what the world has come to in One Piece. There are other countries like Wano that are closed off to the world, and people are getting by taking scraps of leftovers from the nobles of that country. That is what's going on currently in the One Piece world. Does it compare to our world? heavily. From prejudice to slavery to hunger to corruption to an entirely broken system because of how the countries were built. Distrust of the government. A revolution is needed, but how do you get there? In One Piece, there's essentially an opposing force that's created to go against these celestial dragons and the world government. What have they accomplished? What is the future of this group? What do you guys think about it? How do you guys feel about corruption in One Piece? This was on my conscience. This is something I just wanted to talk about, just to get it out there in regards to just world economic strife and how masterfully I think Oda has used our world, the real world, to highlight prejudice and injustice that's going on in the real world and incorporating it into his story seamlessly by showing the true nature of a corrupt world and sometimes a result of trying to change that. It's beautiful when you think about it as far as like how masterful writing it is, but it's sad when you think about how real this is for some people in the world right now. But yeah, give me your thoughts, guys. How do you feel? Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter at BrogDAce. Follow me on Instagram at BrogD.ace. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. Rest in peace, George Floyd.